listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God! Give away.
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I am your host, William, and joined today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And we're all back on the podcast in person for the first time in a while just because of schedules and children being born and football games and other less important things.
Children, football games, Derek.
I got my priorities right.
But on this episode, we'll be discussing Blade Runner 2049, in addition to things we've been watching that include some Netflix releases that are horror-related and some recent news.
Cult of Chucky. You watched
Cult of Chucky,
Gerald's Game.
Yeah, Gerald's Game,
Raw.
Yeah,
I feel like I watched something else too. But
Monday
yeah,
Night Raw or just Raw?
a movie called Raw.
Oh, well, yeah.
So, but before we get to those, we'll talk about some recent news. And there's a few things going on. So, with the just to do a refresher, like when we recorded the last podcast, it was before the shootings in Vegas occurred. So we did not comment on it because it hadn't happened yet. And we know, like a lot of podcasts, I've heard people give disclaimers about, they typically just talk about entertainment things and don't go into too much real world news just because it's meant to be, an entertaining release and things like that. So, we don't really cover too many real world events. Like every now and then we'll discuss like if an actor dies or things like that. But, not to belabor too much about real world events that can bring everybody down because there's a lot of bad stuff going on. But, I don't want to say thoughts and prayers because what was the show? BoJack Horseman had an episode about how they had a movie about a woman who was shooting and killing people, and then as different national tragedies are happening, like with shootings, they always like these executives always start off the meetings like, well, thoughts and prayers, but this will actually help us sell this better. So. And I feel like that's how the real world is. People are like, thoughts and prayers, but maybe now is the time to release my, short film that, well, we actually had a conundrum on that because the short film after this last year was already scheduled and everything to go up on that Monday after the shootings on Sunday. It's like, do we continue to release this or, what? Just because you have like this national tragedy. So my thought was like, well, it's already all scheduled up, so I'll let it release. Just, as business as usual, just to, not try to kowtow to whatever the goal of that shooter was. But we waited a few days to actually promote it and push it and talk about it just because it didn't have anything to do with shooting or anything like that, but it did, talk about violence and stuff. So it sucks when real world events, like they're so frequent and so bad that it's hard to get around them. So we're never really going to spend too much time on, actual events, but definitely, sucks when stuff like that happens and, thoughts go to everybody affected by that. And hopefully we won't have to hear about another event like that anytime soon, although, the way things are going.
Well, we were talking before the podcast started because they pushed, The Punisher and then the Eli Roth Death Wish, but it's like, who's to say, just with the frequency of the stuff happens to them, who's to say, just because they pushed it, it doesn't mean they're going to steer clear of it, which is like a sad thought and kind of a truth to the way things are right now. So
yeah, because it's not that long ago we were talking about the largest one. What was a year and a half ago, Orlando.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of a regular.
Some
thing.
of those records you don't want to be broken.
Yeah,
in terms of, and so, hopefully, generally in this nation, people can get under control. Or I'm not really sure what the solution is, but like that BoJack episode, even the movie had shootings at a bunch of different types of locations, like a mall and the movie theater and all these things. And then like while they're in the meeting, they're like, okay, we actually have to drop the mall shooting because that just happened. And then by the end of the meeting, they like got phone calls and all of the types of scenarios that they had in the movie had happened. Yeah. And it almost feels like that, that obviously it's an animated show, so it was written months ago and, drawn and all that. But then, like, the
it feels
timing
more
of
relevant now.
It feels very prescient.
Yeah, it's not like a new thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's, yeah. What was that movie? The West, wasn't it a Western movie, or was it something set during the Prohibition era? Yeah, I think it was like a gangster film where there was like a theater shooting in a scene in the movie, and then they had to change it. After the Was it the Dark Knight shooting?
Yeah,
or was it
Colorado.
another?
Well, there was. I think there's even been a movie about that Colorado Springs shooting called The Dark Knight, or Dark Knight or something.
Which
that
I
I've
always
seen.
have big issues with stuff like that, especially like, we were talking about this kind of like when we covered the Zodiac, is like when you're covering
real world events
and using the real names of those people that were murdered, like that always kind of rubs me the wrong way,
Yeah, so that'll be kind of all we discuss about that tragedy, and hopefully there's nothing else that comes up, because too often there's real world events that are worse than anything you see in movies just because it's real. So hopefully none of that stuff comes up, but but to actually get back into the more fun side of things on news, there's a few things going on. Like we said, like the Punisher, the Netflix series that looked ultra violent. Did anyone else see the trailer for that? The one that had like Metallica's One.
No.
Yeah, I saw it.
So the trailer for it looked interesting, and it looked like it was going to be an entertaining show. And the release date, like they hadn't said what it was; they were just teasing that it would be soon. So a lot of people are thinking it's going to come out on Friday the 13th in October, just as like a surprise release, because it would, that'd be a good October release. But it's now like their panel from New York Comic-Con got pulled, and they said the show's been pushed back some. So I'm assuming now it's going to come out like November or December. But and then, like I said, the Death Wish got pushed back.
Well, what about the Marvel, that Marvel partnership with Northrop? Grumman? Did you guys hear about that at all?
Yeah, they had,
Did you
it was
hear
like
about that?
some consulting or contracting firm that was going to have like some co-branded panel with them. They got pulled because of public backlash.
Yeah, because they basically do like military products and create like aerial drones and cybersecurity systems. They said essentially, people were saying it's essentially the bad guys from Iron Man 1, like all the Tony Stark stuff.
Yeah.
Marvel partnered with them, and they actually do like fund wars and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was like seemed like a total misstep on Marvel's part, especially with Disney and all that. Like it was a weird thing. And I guess they had a comic book that they made with some characters that were part of it. And everybody's like, essentially, it's just like military propaganda being pushed out. So very weird thing. I didn't look into it that much, but I may be talking out of terms, but
it kind of makes sense because that goes back to like the roots of like Captain America and stuff like that.
Yeah,
because they were essentially.
But now it's for a corporation that is profiting off war and so not not like the propaganda for
movies about this.
The Obadiah Stane, the Jeff Bridges character from the first Iron Man, who was a warmonger, then became the Ironmonger. Like that, or like Iron Man 2, Justin Hammer, not to go too deep in all these characters, just essentially war profiteers.
Yes.
Are the bad guys in those movies. Or, at least they're aligned with the bad guys.
And it shows where the world's at now. Because, Captain America came from a part where it's like, okay, let's build some American pride. And now Marvel's like, all right, no, like, let's profit off of these people that are profiting off war.
It's like, all right, guys, you can't make movies talking bad about this and then
hey, it's where things are at now, unfortunately, so just shut it down.
So there's that information. So the Marvel the Punisher series, we're still waiting to see when that release date's going to be. It's supposed to be ultra violent and stuff, so I'm not sure how far they'll push it back, like a month, 2 months maybe, but we'll see where that will come out. Some other news. So there's been a couple of movies that I watched, I know that nobody else on the podcast did, that apparently have gotten stealth sequels. They're already shot and have been screening. So Unfriended, the movie that was all shot from a computer screen that took place across Skype and Facebook and
how often did Skype drop on them? Because this has been our experience. That's why we try to do them in person as much as possible.
Like last year and had AT&T and they were trying to kill me through that, I'd have been fine because it was just dropped.
It'd have been a 7-hour movie to get through everything.
Because Skype. So Skype was Skype. Unfriended was a movie where multiple friends were on Skype and one of their classmates had committed suicide previously, and they all had some element to do with that, in terms of like some video that got released of her that caused her to commit suicide ultimately. And then a ghostly, figure was appearing on their social media feeds and posting things on Facebook, and then people were dying. So, I watched it and I thought it was entertaining.
Ghosts were posting on Facebook?
Or like the Dead Girl's account was posting stuff.
Okay. So maybe ghost posting.
Ghost posting.
Ghost posting.
So I thought it was, for what it was going in, I was like, how this going to be terrible. And I actually enjoyed it to some extent. So I think I gave like a 3 out of 5. Like, It was good enough.
average.
People seem to like it. It's just a hard start for me to jump into watching an hour movie or hour and a half movie, knowing I'm going to be watching people on a computer screen. Well, not to say that can't be good. Obviously, it is, but
I think the benefit that movie gets though is you think it's going to suck so bad that if you watch it and it's just watchable, you're like,
lowered expectations. Yeah. Was that from
Mad TV?
Mad TV. So I mean, not that it was a masterpiece. And I know a lot of people just flat out hated it. But I think a lot of people now just, I've seen on Facebook people point out movies to a lot of people now are either the best thing ever made or the worst thing ever made. There's very little gray, middle room for a lot of movies. But there's apparently a sequel that's already been shot to that and screened. And then there's also been apparently a sequel that's already been shot and screened for The Gallows, which was a found footage film. And both of those were relatively low budget movies. Because The Gallows, I think the first one was shot like an estimated budget of $100,000, which for a movie that gets a theatrical release is incredibly low. Yeah. Because even though the original Paranormal Activity was supposed to have been a budget of like $15,000, I think once it got acquired, they spent like another 6 figures on the audio mix and reshooting some scenes. So neither The Gallows I wasn't very big on. It was found footage and just the setup for it. It was relatively cool setup, something going
Who
on
was in that.
Nobody knows. It was all just kind of unknowns.
Was there a found footage film that Ray Wise was in?
He was in Digging Up the Marrow. That was the Anna Green film.
That's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
I mean, that's a different beast than any of these. That one I actually enjoyed. Yeah. The Gallows I didn't enjoy because it was just, set in a high school where somebody died or killed themselves previously or something. So it had an interesting setup. It was too much. It was too much found footageness.
So, we're not the audience. I mean, we are not of the age of a lot of the people watching some of these films, and I mean, obviously, people of all ages watch
them. Or the age of people starring those
films. That's what I mean. Well, yeah, the starring, but the characters are a lot of times set in high school. I mean, this film and The Gallows, I wish we could deconstruct and make a film where it was known that the writers are adults, but it's teenagers, and you know what I mean, and it's kind of make a commentary on that and how out of touch we are with people 15 years younger than us.
And then that movie already came out. It was called Lights Out. So
what we should do is do that concept like a found footage film where every character do an Eddie Murphy Nutty Professor or the Clumps thing, and have every part be played by Steve Buscemi playing 50 years younger than he really is.
Whip pan every time to him, and the whip pan back.
Hi kids. But yeah, so there's sequels to those movies. I'm sure we'll see if they get, because both of those made decent enough money because I think Unfriended...
They made decent enough movies.
Unfriended, I think, made $30 million domestic, and The Gallows made 21. So based on their budgets, that's
great for them. That's awesome, but it's almost kind of depressing that Blade Runner has made gonna maybe make $35 million.
Yeah,
and it's they spent $150 million.
We'll see.
But it is first weekend.
But in the history of box office, I doubt a movie's had a better second weekend than the first weekend. So
I mean, wide releases. It's happened. It's been rare. It's been rare. It's typically when they do a slow expansion.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But yeah, so there's those stealth sequels. So we'll have to see how those turn out.
Yeah, I wonder. We can talk about Blade Runner's box office later.
So there's that. There's a 4K restoration of Night of the Living Dead. There's been some teasers for it shown or trailers. So not sure how much better you can make a black and white movie shot in the 60s look, but if they get good scans of the original negatives or things like that, at least it'll be a clean transfer for Blu-ray, which I would look into buying because a lot of the transfers out there now are just terrible. So
I mean, yeah, I think I'm so used to watching that film and it not looking super stellar that I'm having a hard time imagining it even looking better. But and I assume they shot it in a low budget film stock, but if it somehow looked like some of the greatest black and white films of all time, I could see it being looking even more of a masterpiece. Yeah. I don't think that's the case though. I think it's just going to look soft. I think that film is just a soft looking movie. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of contrast with colors. It's just, it's just not a lot of ranges of gray and black in that film. So yeah, they just keep finding ways to re-release that film.
They should let Ted Turner do a colorized.
And I wonder who's actually doing it. Since Turner. Nobody has the official rights really. Is this just...
Well, there's other things there's the 4K restoration of Suspiria that's been talked about.
Well, they showed it. It screened here.
Yeah, I just didn't get a chance to go.
I think I was... that may have been the night that my daughter was born, maybe.
which is slightly more important.
Yeah, I was
You
like,
know,
all right.
4K, Suspiria,
It was like, I think she was born at 11:41, so I was like, I don't think I can make it to Baxter.
So just call back. She's like, hey, here's the situation. Can you delay this like 30 minutes?
I'm a baby. Come on, guys.
What's your policy on newborns? But yeah,
I was
so
really wanting to see that.
yes, I mean, there's some other news out there, and we talked about like the piracy stuff last week about people pirating like Cult of Chucky. I mean, it's on Netflix now, so I guess we can move into what we've been watching.
Well, real quick too, I know we talk about this news too much, but we can just say Ridley Scott is also again talking about what the new Alien might be. So it sounds like there may still be some possibility of that,
I mean,
right?
too, he can talk about it a lot, but I don't think the box office numbers would indicate they would give him the same budget, because the budget for Alien Covenant was lower than the budget for Prometheus, and then it performed worse than Prometheus.
Yeah.
So I would assume if they make another Alien, they might lower the budget yet again.
Yeah.
You get $20 million.
And he basically said it's going to be about David and androids.
Oh, see.
So basically, he wants to make another Blade Runner.
Yes, because so we'll
Which
we can
is
save,
probably a good thing he did.
We could save some of that discussion for the Blade Runner.
Which really,
section,
he's
but-
kind of mentioned that it's sort of the same universe as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
which would
so,
be
studio-wise, though, Fox is Blade Runner is Warner Brothers, right?
Yeah.
And then Fox is Alien. So
I assume that they said some deal with Sony too, because there was Sony stuff in the movie.
yeah, there's also Atari stuff.
Yeah, so apparently they become a behemoth in gaming, and 50
Yeah, I
something
think
years
they
from
were
now.
just keeping in tune with the
original.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now I can move into the discussion of what we've been watching, and we watched a number of things. So I guess we can start with. So I know on the last episode, John, you talked a little bit about Gerald's Game,
Yeah.
and I got a chance to watch that. It's on Netflix now, and it's a Netflix original. It's from Derek's favorite director, Mike Flanagan, who did Hush and Ouija, Origin of Evil, and Oculus, and Absentia.
I want to see Luigi: Origin of Evil, directed by Mike Flanagan. Luigi, which is the Luigi Haunted Mansion game adaptation, or what was that? Luigi's Mansion.
Yeah, Luigi's Mansion.
I want to Oompa Loompa. And give it me the pizza. But so Gerald's Game.
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it, and the overall movie. Carla Gugino gives a great performance. Bruce Greenwood, who I was like, he's in a bunch of stuff now, because he was in the Star Trek prequel series, and I've seen him like on 50 different TV shows.
I had to look him. We had to look him up because Nicole and I both were like, yeah. Don't know his name, don't know what he's from, and
But
there was
he's in, like,
there was like a
everything.
list like, yeah, we've seen like all of this stuff he's in. It's just,
because I remember
he hasn't been to the forefront as much as he has been in this one.
Yeah, because he's like a madman and like 50 different other things. So he's in a ton
He
of
was
stuff.
very good in it, I thought, as well.
Yeah, I mean, played that role well, and then all of it made sense. So overall, like, I enjoyed the movie. It was something that didn't like have me on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, like, in my opinion, in terms of like recent King adaptations, it's definitely, quality. Like, it's enjoyable and you can watch it. It's not, some of the more kitschier type of adaptations we've seen of different material from him.
It's my favorite Mike Flanagan film. I mean, do
Yeah.
you like it better than Hush and Ouija?
Yeah, I think I liked it better than Hush, just because.
Hush sucked.
Well, I mean, Hush was. I mean, I haven't rewatched that, in a long time. I mean, I should give it another watch, but it was just, kind of like the home invasion single location deal, and this was another movie that was mostly single location. But
it's done in such an interesting way that it's not boring at all.
I will say,
it keeps it fresh, I think.
like, overall, I enjoyed the movie, and just to echo the comments that you'd had in the last episode about the last like 10 minutes or
Yeah,
so.
very weird.
So to me, it kind of has an ending point, and you're like, okay, and then it goes on and like essentially squeezes an entire another movie into the last 10 minutes. So you squeeze what could be an entire movie condensed into 10 minutes. And I think that story at the end could have made an almost more entertaining movie than the one we just watched.
But a
if
more
they-
expensive one.
a more expensive one, because without spoiling it, there's a character that is mentioned throughout, and I think if they had focused on that and expanded that into its own movie and that mythology,
I mean, it would have been a different type too, because this movie is very much just kind of about like one woman's, I don't know, I guess her past history, her present history, and just kind of she's struggling with a lot of things herself, and it's like it's a movie about this character, and yeah, she's in a situation, but this situation has caused her to be introspective about her entire life, and it kind of brings in some of those things, and it's like, I don't know. It's really well done, I think. As far as Stephen King, the concept for it.
It's layered.
It's not Saw. It's not her sitting in a room figuring out how to get out, and that's all it is. Like, it's way more interesting than that.
Question: did it have a time frame for the movie? Like, did it have a year that was
Present day?
Because if you had an iPhone and you just yelled like "Hey Siri," then the entire movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say because there is like there.
I don't think my phone will do that though. I don't think I have mine turned on. Hey Siri.
You had to like.
Hey Siri.
Mine doesn't.
No, like Hey Siri, call William, and then
mine doesn't do it. Hey Siri, check my email.
Yeah, see, mine does it. Now it's saying check my email.
How old?
But see, mine's just going on. So like, if you just did that. It would just call.
So right now, mine says, "Hey Siri, set my mouth as Amanda. It is now Saint Rita. How old is the man who's going on?" So Rita
there's
did
a possible out for that. The phone is by her. There's a possible out though.
Yeah.
In the film, why it doesn't do that.
So I mean, like,
but I always watch them.
Well,
like
they say the battery's low or whatever.
Yeah, the battery's dead in the phone.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, but saying like if you just had.
Well, that's like something they mentioned very early on.
Yeah, but that's just because if it was just a normal thing, it was in 2017. You had an iPhone. You just like
because like so
blah, blah, blah,
yeah because I've been
over.
Because there's been times I've been laying in bed and I forgot to set the alarm for the next morning, so I'll just say, "Hey Siri, set the alarm for 9 a.m. and then or 8 a.m. or whatever."
Also, too, she's older than us and she may not be used because I'm not used to using that, so she may not also.
So just note to everyone's self, not to end up in a Saw or Gerald's Game type situation. Turn on the Hey Siri feature of your iPhone or an equivalent feature on your Android phone because they have like the Google Assistant.
And keep it at least above 50% charge.
And then if you're ever in a situation where you're tied up and you can't reach your phone, you can use that feature. But back to the movie, I enjoyed it. It wasn't like a knockout, but I would recommend, it's on Netflix, so if you have that, it's definitely worth checking out. And I know, I forgot what score you gave it out of 10. But to me,
go ahead.
To me, it's like a 7.5 or somewhere in that range. So like a solid, enjoyable film that I recommend checking out because it's on Netflix. Probably won't end up like my top 5 of the year or anything like that, but a solid film that you can check out on Netflix now.
Yeah, I was gonna say I forgot what I gave it to, but I'd probably land around a 7
or 8, somewhere in that
7
range.
or 8.
So then too, Derek, did you watch anything?
Outside like stuff that doesn't pertain to this, no.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I've been. Yeah, everybody retired at one time at my job, so we're just doing it.
You got to work,
and football games. That's one reason I wasn't on here because I was butthurt. So, no, I do know what happens to Gerald's game because I've read the book, but it's probably a little different.
Yeah. So, I've heard it stays pretty close, but.
Yeah, I had read one review that said something like one of the most faithful adaptations of a Stephen King book.
But like you read that, but to me like that
it's hard.
Yeah,
it but they said one of the most.
Yeah.
It's not like
if Stephen King likes stuff, I always. Have you seen it yet?
No.
Okay.
I haven't. Yeah. The only movie I've been to see is Blade Runner since my daughter was born because. My wife's like there with the baby.
Gotta live that Deckard life. So now I guess too we can discuss Raw. So that's on Netflix as well. And it was a movie that was at a number of festivals and had a lot of buzz about it. And it was a movie where people talked about while watching it, different viewers in the theater got sick and vomited and had to leave. Which, after watching the movie, I call bullshit on that claim because if this movie made you vomit, I don't know what you've been.
Okay, so
Gerald's Game had more gruesome gore to me.
Oh man, yeah, there's a gruesome moment. But to be fair, you told me that, and I was like, okay, none of it really made me vomit, but. Not really.
Kind of vomited.
No, but here's the thing: if you were a vegetarian watching this,
then you're the worst.
Hey,
or you were sensitive to certain things, I could see this affecting certain people. You know what I mean? It's not the most gross stuff we've ever seen on screen by far, but also kind of the tone and the presentation. So, what I liked about it is like, yeah, it's a horror film, but it's not. I don't know. It's just it doesn't. What country was this made in? Do you know?
It was a French-Belgium co-production.
Okay. So, yeah, it doesn't have the feel of just a typical American, horror film that is just like a pure horror film.
So just to give you just a brief idea of what the movie's about, it is about a young girl who is going to college, who's a vegetarian, and she's going to veterinary school, which is where her family went because her mom and dad are vets or went there, and her sister is a vet. Or is in vet school like a year or two ahead of her. And she goes there, and as part of the initiation ritual, they require them to eat like
it's like a
rabbit kidney or something, like a raw rabbit kidney. And then after getting that taste of meat, she, likes the taste of it and then goes on to be somewhat cannibalistic. And that's kind of the overview of all you need to know. And it's one of those movies, too. I think the reason that a lot of there was like, oh, people vomited when they watched it was that it was a French, like, art house film, kind of. So you had that going to the very highbrow audience.
I can't handle this.
Because I remember seeing Book of Mormon, and people talked about how offensive it was and how they were so upset and they walked out. And I watched
it's
it.
The context.
I watched like Book of Mormon. It's like that's no more offensive than an episode of South Park. Or to me, I didn't think it was that. I thought it was funny and enjoyable, and I really liked it. But I didn't think it was all that offensive. So I think with this movie, it was people who were like, the artsy fartsy types who only watch like art house cinema, who went into it, and then any gore whatsoever is enough to set them off. And I think it was a marketing ploy on part of the studio that was releasing it.
Absolutely, they probably took advantage. But like again, because of the presentation of this and the tone of it. I mean, granted, the tone is a little off kilter and
they have some like synthy music at some point. It's like it completely clashes with like the art house trappings.
It does a little bit, but it's again, it's not this typical kind of lowbrow. This isn't. This isn't
the Green Inferno.
Yeah, this isn't the Green Inferno or anything like that. So I think that's where it kind of throws you for a loop because you're watching this story, and I was enjoying it. Like it's about this girl going to college, being hazed. She's with her sister. Like it's just kind of you're watching these students in college, and then when it starts to devolve into something else, I think that clash of like the film feels more grounded. You know what I mean? Like it feels like there's real characters and stuff like that. Then when the cannibal stuff starts coming into play, I think it's a much harder to stomach than seeing, some fake acting teenagers from the Green Inferno getting eaten. You know what I mean? Like it's a much different
cannibals.
thing.
They're eating her.
It's a much different thing when you're seeing and you're like, this is a goofy whatever, as opposed to kind of being into a story with the characters. And there are some moments that are a little off kilter, and I think the humor is supposed to be a little bit off at times. Because you mentioned the end is you think the end's a little ridiculous at one point.
Like if it's supposed, like to me, the end, without spoiling or discussing whatsoever, like the end of the movie, like if it's supposed to be like an emotional moment, to me it came across as parody and comical.
Yeah, I didn't think it was supposed to be emotional. I may be wrong too, but I just thought it was supposed to be ridiculous to like certain heights of being like how ridiculous this all is, because it is such a an unrealistic thing, but at the same time it is about like these two sisters as well and their relationship, and one part of the film they kind of fight a little bit and then they're helping each other make up, you know what I mean, like clean up and everything, and my wife said, oh, that's how sisters are, you know what I mean. So that's what I appreciated about it, that it did feel like real characters, and even though you've got this cannibal thing going on, it all felt like real characters.
Well, too, like I just read an article about some terrible hazing that resulted in a young man's death at Penn State, about how terrible that was, because like a guy was really drunk at a party and fell downstairs and suffered serious injuries, and then the frat brothers refused to call for medical attention and just like laid him on a couch and like laid a backpack and stuff on him so he wouldn't move, and they were hitting him in the face and trying to wake him up and throwing stuff at him when he had like severe internal injuries, like it ruptured a spleen. And then the guy, like, at the middle of the night when he tried getting, because they have security cameras in the dorm to capture all of it. It's like a, torture porn film, but real life. And then the guy like tried to get out of the house, but he was too intoxicated and injured to be able to walk. So he would like fall down and stuff. And then they eventually called 911 like the next morning after it was too late and he died. So after having read about like terrible hazing stuff and then watching this movie, it's like, is that really the hazing that goes on in other countries? Like in like France, is that really the level of hazing that goes on? Because that's like terrifying in its own right.
Yeah.
That would be accepted or whatever. Like maybe that's not heightened and that is how it happens. I'm not sure.
You mean as far as what happens in the beginning, like about eating the raw stuff? Yeah, I mean,
well, they dump like so they're doing a group picture, and then like raw animal blood gets dropped on them.
Well, I mean, I would almost believe a lot of that.
Watch like I would assume people in our audience maybe don't watch A Dailies Catch, but I work with a bunch of guys that do, and they're hazing on the guys that get on there. The first thing is like to eat a raw crab or to eat a raw fish. Like they catch all the crabs, and there's the fish. They have to then eat the head of it all.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't find that to be, like, a crazy thing. You watch them guys do
I didn't think the hazing was too crazy. I mean, they're, like, cruel to them like you would expect. But I almost thought that the hazing was going to be them making them eat humans, like from the trailer and stuff like that. And I just thought it was going to be that type of movie, like where all these people were going to be forced to like be cannibals. And I was like, I don't know. So like, I don't know. I like the direction of the film based on my kind of expectations for it. And also too, it was well reviewed. And a lot of times there might be well reviewed films that I just don't click with me on certain levels. And this one actually did. Like I did end up liking this one quite a bit. Well, it wasn't my favorite of the year or anything. I know it came out last year, but at the same time I did.
Well, it's supposed to like, because there's been other movies that it's supposed to like a coming of age and confronting your identity and things like that. There's been a lot of other movies that covered similar ground that I connected with a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not somebody that's anti-art house films because we've liked some stuff, like Mother, that was pretty obscure and allegorical. Yeah, Mother. I'll kick the door down. But like, so I enjoy stuff that's not straightforward films. I enjoy foreign films. Just to me, it didn't connect, and all the hype for it. It was like a female director, it was like a first-time director, so it was like that aspect is cool. But to me, like it was, it wasn't exploitation style, which not that I like exploitation style to begin with. Not that alone makes me like something, but I don't think it went far enough in any one direction. Mm-hmm. And it didn't really connect with me on any level. And I just came away reading some of the reviews that are like a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. And it's like, maybe you have a different set of lifestyle circumstances that make you connect to the material more. Yeah. But to me, it was just kind of like meandering. There was no real point. It was just kind of different events occurred.
Well, all I can say is if I can watch stuff on the Discovery Channel that is more grotesque than the premise of this movie as far as just eating a liver, it's like, you need to rethink.
Well, no, that's a springboard in the film.
Yeah, but I'm saying, that's like where this starts off. I was like, I go watch watch a dude bite a head off of a fish.
Yeah. Like a lot of the gore in the movie is ultimately implied, really. Like it shows some gore, but
it just shows their artsy fartsy lifestyle.
Like honestly, so my wife was out of the room when like one of the turning points happens in the film. When she starts making that turn, and my wife and I don't think my wife knew exactly what it was about, and I told her what had just happened. She's like, "Are you serious?" Like it blew her away that's what happened. I think because of the tone of the film, and it was like it is kind of outlandish, but it's it does kind of meander, but almost that's why I kind of got into it. It almost felt like, almost like a hangout film. Like you just kind of were with these kids in college for a bit. Like if you're watching Clerks or Dazed and Confused or something, it kind of just felt like, all right, I know a big plot points aren't moving forward, but I'm enjoying these characters, and some people may not, and that's
so essentially
totally
what this is the super like shelter kid that never got to do anything in high school, goes to college, gets radar movies and beer, and just goes on the deep end.
Actually, her parents forced her to be a vegetarian.
And now this is just the vegetarian version.
Yeah, so her parents forced her to be a vegetarian, so she's there and she's like, I'm a vegetarian. So
instead of beer and alcohol and movies and everything else, it's meat.
Exactly. I mean, that's why I liked it though, because it was just so like out there. But I don't know. Yeah, I liked Raw. It's on Netflix. William didn't. It's definitely not for everybody. I would say that. Regardless,
and not like I said, not that I'm somebody that only likes like American films. Like one of my favorite films, like Pan's Labyrinth. So like stuff with subtitles and stuff, I'm cool with. It's just that movie didn't really connect with me. And too, like I said, I'd watched Gerald's Game and Raw on the same day, and Gerald's Game got a much more visceral reaction from me with one of its gore scenes, and that entire movie Raw did.
Yeah, Gerald's Game had. I mean, that's a pretty rough gore scene in Gerald's Game too, like probably one of the roughest of the year I've seen.
I know what you're talking about.
So like,
dude, the way it is displayed is insane.
OJ. So Raw, if I had to give it a score out of 10, I'd say like 5. Like I enjoyed like some of the visual stuff and some of what was going on, just it didn't connect me on an overall level. And when it had somewhat of like a synthy score kicking in, it really was at odds with like the art house tone.
I have a question. Would you rather watch that or Euro Trip?
Probably Euro Trip.
Okay.
Are
you the one that liked Euro Trip a lot?
I'm the one that hates it a lot.
Okay, you either love it or hate it.
That's the one I hate a lot. Which really I've only seen a little bit of that movie. I just saw enough to know I hated it with every fiber, and I haven't given it another chance, and that's immature of me. But I've really had.
But that's really rare for you.
You're not missing much.
Like anything.
Yeah. I watched part of that movie whenever it came out in high school. I was like, no, and I liked Road Trip.
Yeah.
The
Tom Green,
the predecessor that was really nothing, having to do with it, but. It was like a spiritual sequel. So yeah, I would give Raw probably like an 8 out of 10. Like I'm like interested to see what the director does next.
Yeah.
Just because it did feel like there was a lot of personal touchstones in the film, and I thought it was from a female director. I wasn't for sure, but then some of the moments in the film, I was like, this is obviously seems like it's from a female perspective.
It's not from Eli Roth.
Just because of the sisters, their dynamic and stuff like that. Like I really liked that part because it did make me feel like I was able to get into their lives. And obviously I don't have a sister. I'm not a female. So it was able to like show me a different side of, you know, these kids in another country. And you know what I mean? It felt like it had some real moments in there. And that's what I appreciated about it.
I didn't watch this, but I feel like if a guy directed it, like there'd be like wet t-shirts and like just ridiculous,
there is some
underwear.
There is some nudity, but it's not.
There'd be a rave of people eating arms and everything.
Yeah.
Like it would.
So like another point that I was gonna make was this movie makes the cardinal sin that a lot of films do. You know, if there was any it seems like the police are non-existent and don't investigate anything. And it seems like if they were, they completely ignored these characters who would stick out like a sore thumb as ones you should look into. And maybe it's just because they didn't want to focus on that aspect of it. But like there's so often in horror genre films where it's like, or, even superhero films. Like if you watch the original, like even the Sam Raimi like Spider-Man film, like the first Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, like those origin stories. Both of those characters in both those movies, Peter Parker does stuff where it's like, no, if you want to know who Spider-Man is, maybe it's the kid that shot fucking webbing everywhere in the lunchroom in the first Spider-Man. So there's all these things kids do that's like, you would be prime target number one if anybody remembered anything that occurred in their vicinity and talked about it. This person would be immediately somebody to investigate.
So he shot webbing in the lunchroom. Did he?
Yeah.
To catch the tray. Did everybody see that? Was it far away?
Because he left the
walks out,
lunchroom.
Maybe they
hits
thought
the
he was
door.
coming of age.
Yeah.
Some puns there, but it's just like this movie did that too, where it's like if they're investigating whatsoever, your prime targets are very clear. But whatever. So
I like the trucker in this film that was rubbing that guy's ear. Like I like that whole
the
scene.
French redneck.
Yeah, there's just like there was a French redneck, and I don't know. There's just like little moments like that, and they're very cool.
It's or as they say, lay redneck. So you also watched Cult of Chucky, right? I didn't get a chance to watch that yet.
I haven't seen. I don't even know what all Chucky movies there are.
There's Curse of Chucky.
Wait. Let's start from the beginning. There's
Chucky.
Child's Play.
Child's Play 2.
Child's Play 2.
Child's Play 3.
Child's Play 3. Is 3 the one at the
military
Boy Scout?
Yes.
Yeah, the
boys' military camp or whatever.
Okay. And then is 4 Bride of Chucky?
I think so.
Okay. Seen that one. But this is all back when they came out.
Yeah.
Seen Bride of Chucky. Next one was Seed of Chucky.
Yeah, like the kid.
And what was that one?
It was just the one that had the kid.
What kid?
Like the baby.
Yeah, the baby
like
Chucky.
the Jennifer Tully puppet and then doll and Chucky doll.
And then they had
made
a kid?
a baby.
I don't think I've seen that one. So I haven't seen any past that.
And then I think after that was Curse of Chucky.
And then now just the cult, right? After that.
Yeah, so it's Child's Play 2, Child's Play 3, Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Curse of Chucky, and then the new one, Cult of Chucky.
Okay, just to give context of where I'm at and what I know about the Chucky films.
So from between Child's Play 3 and Bride of Chucky, they switched from having Child's Play in the title to Chucky in the title.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, for marketing purposes and brain recognition, and most people knew Chucky. There's a lot of people that have probably seen the first ones and don't know they're called Child's Play.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I guarantee they're just like, oh, Chucky, because people call like Friday 13th Jason and Halloween Michael Myers. So
And Nightmare on Elm
for
Street.
name recognition, I think it makes sense to have Chucky in the title. Because remember Bride of Chucky being a movie that I saw a lot about, and I think that was the one where they had Chucky on WCW Nitro, like having a promo against some wrestler, trash talking.
Yeah, and that's why the 90s wrestling was awesome, because that just doesn't happen. You would never see Chucky trash talking NFL player.
Yeah, so it's a storied franchise that a lot of fans were upset or didn't like Seed of Chucky and thought that had like steered it in the wrong direction, and then enjoyed Curse of Chucky, and then have enjoyed Cult of Chucky. So not having seen all those movies in order, could you pick up this one and watch it, Cult of Chucky?
Yeah, because I have a somewhat general understanding. You know what I mean? Like I think you definitely need to at least kind of know that. What is her name? Something Valentine. I've already forgot.
Vicky Valentine.
Jennifer
What's
Tilly.
Vicky Valentine?
Jennifer Tilly's character's name.
Oh,
Let's look it up. I don't remember.
Something Valentine. What is it? I'm drawing a blank.
Tiffany.
Tiffany Valentine. Okay, so Yeah, I think knowing the events of Bride of Chucky at least, and I'm sure some more events have transpired, but just knowing kind of at least up to that film, I was able to like follow along fine enough, and it was entertaining enough without having too much other backstory, just because I have not sought out those other films. Like, so I've heard people complain too that like, oh, there's some of this stuff in here doesn't make sense with what's happening or whatever. Like, I'm totally fine with that because it is a film about like
a doll that's
a doll,
life.
a possessed doll,
a doll that has the soul of like a criminal in it.
So like knowing that, it's set in a. I'm trying to think of the PC term for this.
Mental institution.
Mental institution is
The loony bin.
Yeah, that's all I know how to say. Loony bin.
The One Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest.
So it's set in
White
there,
House?
and one of the patients, Brad Dourif's, I guess, daughter, I assume
Yes.
by her name, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I loved her in this. I think it was an awesome choice. I don't know about the previous film if she's actually in that, but they bring up her connection to
Fiona Dourif.
Yes, I thought she was excellent in it, and like awesome choice, and it makes sense with a lot of things that happens in the film. And she looks like Brad Dourif. Like, it's weird. It's weird having an attractive Brad Dourif.
Yeah, she was in the prior movie too.
Okay, yeah. So it probably would be pretty good to watch that prior movie for sure. But it's an interesting fold because she's in there, and they're basically telling her like, hey, Chucky isn't real, and so you've got all these characters in there that also have different, I guess, mental issues, yeah. And so you never really know if it brings into question if things are really happening or if it's these people's perspectives. And I really like that element to it. There's also some straightforward stuff, but the action, if you just want to watch Chucky kill some people in a Chucky film, like you can pretty much turn it on. And I was surprised at how fast out of the gate things start happening. But it also doesn't feel like it's just thrown on screen for it to just happen. Like I enjoyed it quite a bit. Not like a gigantic Chucky fan, obviously, because I hadn't even seen all the films. But considering it's on Netflix, like I would give it a watch. It'd be in October.
Yeah.
If you're at all interested in Chucky and you just want to see a Chucky film, you can turn it on and kind of, if you know a little bit of the backstory.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty well done. Yeah. I guess Chucky kind of was a little bit self-aware before, but it's just weird him like bringing up stuff. Like I saw in Nathan, that one group Nathan's in, talking about how the DP like shot an episode or two of Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
Like Chucky even says something like about the Hannibal show and why it should have never been canceled. Like there's just like weird stuff like that.
Because Don Mancini wrote on Hannibal.
Oh,
on the series.
okay. That's right. Yes. Because you had told me that before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why he had Chucky say that. But anyway, Brad Dourif is obviously great, as Chucky still. So I think it's awesome that they've been able to stick with the same voice. Like I feel like once that voice changes, it's gonna feel like off-brand Chucky. You know what I mean?
It's gonna feel like Kmart Chucky.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is though, like Chucky kind of is now the Kmart version of itself because it went from being like wide release films to just
Well, I mean,
VOD
but I think
or
too,
streaming.
that
But
makes-
that is the changing of the guard really nowadays because you don't have to go to theaters to be
Because I think that because like Bride of Chucky was like a bigger release movie, so I think with this one it's more of
yeah, but that came out 20 years ago almost.
Well, it came out in like the late
97?
90s or whatever.
Yeah, 98,
So you're like, okay, we got this level of audience who's going to show up for these films, and also like this is a movie that was widely pirated. So don't pirate it. Watch it through official channels. I mean, if you
don't got $10 a month to watch Netflix,
so it's on Netflix. I've heard that the difference between the Netflix and the Blu-ray is that the Blu-ray is the unrated cut, and it has a post-credit sequence that's not in the Netflix version. So if you're actually a big fan of the franchise, it sounds like getting a physical copy of it is worth your
out
time.
already?
Yeah, you can order it now, I believe. So so it's legit. You can order it legally. It's on Netflix. It's going to be an AMC Sphere Fest. So watch it through one of the legal means. And if you're a big fan of the series, buy the physical copy because that's the only thing that really makes money for them.
I mean, this is, again, minor spoiler, but obviously if there's a post-credit scene, like, it leads to there possibly being a sequel. Like, I didn't
would
see
assume.
that. I didn't see that, but I really like the way this film ends, and it makes me excited for a sequel.
Mancini's
Chucky v.
talked
Jason
about
v.
Mancini's
Freddy
talked
Krueger.
about a TV series of Chucky.
Really?
So I mean, with so who would win in a fight between Chucky and the Ashy Slashy puppet from Ash vs. Evil Dead?
I would much rather see the Ash puppet win.
Well, the puppet requires me in somebody's hand, though.
Yeah, Chucky, I think.
Chucky with the Ash actually puppet on his hand.
Yes, yeah.
Or Kermit.
Chucky versus Ash would be a good episode of Ash versus Evil Dead.
I like
Yeah.
to see Chucky versus the Muppets.
Oh, that would be really good.
Yeah, I would like to watch that.
But yeah,
Kermit.
so I actually think the direction the end of this film goes in, yeah, they could go many ways with it. Like they could actually almost turn this into a series or a TV series or I don't know. I really liked kind of how it ended up. I'm like, okay, that's a cool little direction for this. And I'm totally on board for it. So when a new one does come out, if it does,
yeah,
I will definitely be watching that. Like I watched this one out of curiosity and I heard it was pretty good, but I'm actually kind of excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Like the world's changed so much though now. So if you did a new Chucky, he had to be like a Hatchimal or a Furby.
Well,
he could no longer be a Cabbage Patch style.
Well, I think to go-
again, you need to
or
see
Buddy
the end of the
Doll.
to
film.
go
It's-
wide with, to make this be like a big in theater franchises again, I think you would need to make it PG-13 and you need to do more ghost and jump scares and stuff.
You can't. Chucky's got to drop the F-bomb.
And I think that would lose the core of what that series is. So I think going the direct-to-video, or I think that route is better for the franchise than sanitizing it and putting it on the screen and going after not the fan base of the existing property, but trying to get a new fan base.
Yeah, like
So
it
a
seems
TV
like-
show could probably bring in more
But
fans.
you gotta bring in new fans and make more money.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a balance.
They keep the. I mean, it's a nice looking movie. It looks good. It doesn't look super low budget or anything like that, or like direct. It doesn't have a direct to DVD quality.
well, I think the budget was like $4 to $5 million or something like
it
that.
only does in the aspect that it's basically one location. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So because it is primarily that one location, it keeps it interesting, but it just doesn't feel super expansive where it feels like you have a lot of places to go. And also to the location, it's almost like a highly stylized mental institute. You know what I mean? Like everything's like white and pristine, and it's a little weird and off. Like my wife was even like, there's no place like that. And the nurses even have like high skirts and stuff.
Which you don't see in real
I
world.
thought maybe it was like one of the characters. It was going to be like this place was all in their mind because it was like kind of off as far as being kind of set in reality. So I'll be interested to see where the series goes though. But I did enjoy it, and I would definitely recommend watching that if you just want like a straightforward horror film to watch for Halloween.
Yeah.
And it's pretty safe bet. You will see some good kills and stuff like that. Like there's some good stuff in there.
So what would you give it out of 10?
Like I liked Raw better. I
Yeah.
appreciated Raw more, but I would still maybe give this like, maybe like a 7 or 8, maybe. Like
So like I'm planning on checking it out. I just didn't have time to.
Maybe a 7 because like it's not stellar. I don't care about really watching it again too much, but for what it was, it satisfied that need.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we can move into our review of Blade Runner 2049, which is the new movie from director Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve. And it stars Ryan Gosling, Harrison Ford, Ana de Armas, who was in Knock Knock. Because I was like, where have I seen her at? She was in that Eli Roth movie that I watched. Dave Bautista was in it. Robin Wright.
He was great.
Yeah, he's really expanded his.
This will be spoiler free until we get to the spoiler
We'll
section.
go without spoilers. I mean, is it a spoiler to mention people that are in the cast list?
We can probably just stop there.
Okay.
They had an X-Men cast member in it.
So it's Blade Runner 2049.
Wait, let's back up real quick. What movie did we talk about last week, William, that Derek wasn't here for because it had all those X-Men characters in it?
Trick or Treat.
Yeah, Trick or Treat. Did you know how many X-Men characters are in that?
They had like Brian Cox, Anna Paquin.
Yeah, there's like 7 of them or something.
There's only one in this movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so
Blade Runner is essentially like the same character.
I didn't think we'd be talking about X-Men this week. Last week I thought we would, but
Maybe I should just do
Derek.
I'll just do an X-Men connection like every movie because I feel like I
where's
can
the
find
X
one.
Connect?
So Blade Runner 2049. The basic synopsis is a young Blade Runner's discovery of a long buried secret leads him to track down former Blade Runner Rick Deckard, who's been missing for 30 years. And
That's not a spoiler.
The box office numbers, as of right now, the estimates are that it's going to come in the U.S. at 31 million.
It's not good.
So coming in below, their expectations were in the 40 to 50 range. So this is tracking well below that.
And so what I was going to ask earlier is, I mean, I don't know. I would like to talk to like box office analysis. I wish we had somebody could interview somebody on some of this stuff, because it's like, do you think this help it or hurt it when it got released? Should it have been released in the summer? You know, like in the dead of the summer.
I think it kind of hurt it.
No, I think this is the right time of year to release it because if it gets nominations,
it's a little bit Oscar push.
So if it gets nominations, because I think it'll definitely get nominations for Deakins, who is the DP, and on technical awards, and maybe acting or screenplay or something. But I think that allows them to get that bump and to have it keep legs. Because if you dump this in the summer, it's not a box office, summer spectacle movie.
Yeah, it doesn't.
That's true too.
And I think that would.
Does this go with the Guardians of the Galaxies, Wonder Woman's, the Spider-Man? You have all that other stuff coming out, and then you have this, which is actually a really methodical, kind of a slow burn.
And this movie is not going to have a lot of competition that's going for the same audience for a while.
I don't know if this movie has any other type of competition.
Even if the box office numbers weren't great, hopefully it can have legs and continue to bring in audiences, throughout the remainder of the year. Versus if you dump this in July. And it comes out and it doesn't do well. The next week it gets buried by something else.
Yeah, Wonder Woman and Spider-Man.
That's a good answer, box office Willie. You satisfied me. So I agree. You've sold me on that.
Who's gonna go? And I think one question I have too: does the runtime hurt this movie? Because this is a very long movie.
That's true. The summer, this runtime would not have worked for the summer.
No.
I don't think.
Well, because theaters would not want to schedule this movie when they could schedule 2 movies in that same theater.
And see, I kind of think this is a good time for it too.
You could have done like 2 Mummies versus one Blade Runner.
But this sounds kind of weird. But I think that I would have thought that it being as successful as it was would have kind of bode well for this movie because
a completely different audience.
Hold on, let me finish my thought here. You're talking about it is an extremely long movie as well. For a horror movie being over 2 hours, it's a very long movie. Most horror movies are an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So you're talking a movie that's 30 minutes, and again, these are both very long movies. The box office was essentially dead. It had been doing the worst it had done in almost my entire lifetime. So I'm 27. So then it comes out. It's kind of like when you're a comedian and remember how Jerry always wanted the guy to go. He wanted to get somebody to warm you up.
Oh, in Seinfeld.
It came out, warmed up everybody's pocketbooks a little bit because it showed that movies could be successful again. And then I thought that all that lined up perfectly for this to come in and make decent money. So it's kind of disappointing to see that it's kind of went back to where it was because the box office has been historically bad.
People like clowns, man.
Yeah.
I think that what's going to happen with Blade Runner, which is what happens with a lot of movies this year. So it debuted to 30 million.
And
so
it had good reviews.
If it has a multiplier that a lot of films like this have, it can approach 100 million if it has a little bit of legs.
Maybe.
So if it hit 100 million domestic and it does well internationally because it has Harrison Ford in it, who's a big name, if it does well internationally, then it can make this a profitable endeavor. And I mean, hopefully that's the case just because, we'll get into our thoughts on the movie, but I think that it has the possibility this is an example of where international box office might actually be a very good thing. But the thing that kills me is if this movie doesn't get bailed out by international box office, that bailed out pieces of steaming shit like Transformers, like all those sequels, a lot of movies that were not good got bailed out by strong international numbers. And if this movie doesn't, then it's like, damn it, why can't the international ever work in the favor of something? Because I don't think we'll get another Blade Runner movie at this point. I mean, I don't think we really need one.
Yeah.
I told my wife before I even saw this, I said, you know what my hopes for this movie is? That they make a sequel again in 30 years. Ryan Gosling is the old man. We got a new director in. And because, 30 years since the original, we have this time to kind of actually catch up to some of the things, not exactly, but you know what I mean? Like things have changed with technology, our thoughts on it and everything. So in 30 more years, we'll be at another certain point where there'll be something really interesting to say or a lot of interesting points to bring up about the future 30 years from now.
Yeah,
like that would be a really cool
Blade
thing
Runner 2079.
Exactly. Yeah. Like every 30 years, make a new Blade Runner.
I would be okay with
that.
Yeah. So I guess we can get into the thoughts on the movie, not just talking about the box office, but actual thoughts on it.
To start off with, how do you feel about the original Blade Runner? Because there's a lot of people, a lot of comparisons and a lot of debate because Blade Runner's not everybody's favorite film. Some people love it. Where do you guys stand on it?
I put it like this, being that it had Harrison, if you took Harrison Ford out of it, I don't think I would have liked it as much.
The original Blade Runner.
The original Blade Runner. But it is a really interesting movie. I think it's we say this a lot, but I do think it's a pretty important movie because you see all the stuff that it influenced over the years.
It visually influenced a ton of stuff, including like the Christopher Nolan Batman films, all kinds of stuff.
And I just love like the designs of everything, like the way it looks. Like you just don't see stuff in movies like that anymore, or you do, but it just doesn't feel genuine. It feels like they're trying to be them, trying to do the Blade Runner look.
Yeah, you can't do it the first time again, and it came from like the cyberpunk novels, Neuromancer, but like this was on screen. Live action,
Ridley
first
Scott,
time,
director of Alien.
This was
Harrison Ford.
He showed people how to realize this in a real vision.
Yeah, I think if you haven't seen it, like you don't have to have seen the original Blade Runner, I don't think, to enjoy the newest one.
There's only a few touch point characters,
but I still feel like
it makes more sense.
I feel like at this point, there's really no reason not to because I think the original is so good, and it builds on it and it also changes the original.
But see, I can see this being a movie like that. People who've never seen the original watch this one because of like Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, they will,
and then they go back and watch the original.
They will, but if you're gonna watch this anyway, like. Just go ahead and watch that original.
Well, and two, it shows the risk you take when you make an adaptation of like a cult or a popular property that because the original movie didn't do well at the box office, and it became and the reviews for it weren't great at the time either. But it kind of got reassessed over the years and became a cult hit and became like a staple on TV. And like how many versions of it are on Blu-ray and DVD? There's like the director's cut, the final cut, and then the theatrical cut. So
and work print.
It's a movie that's existed in a lot of formats and has been very popular on the as a cult hit, but didn't do super well at the box office. So it's how much can you count on those fans you built up over the years showing up to theaters? Because a lot of people who love Blade Runner were not around when the first movie hit theaters because it came out in 1982, so it's many years later. Yeah, and so you have all those types of.
But they should be around now, though, to go watch the second. So.
Yeah, so you have those elements, too. Like, the original movie, I saw that on TV years ago and saw the theatrical cut with the Harrison Ford narration. So that was the first time I saw it. It was with the Harrison Ford narration. That was incredibly lazy and sounded like he was just like...
Which he was
bad Harrison,
yeah.
Which that's why I love Harrison Ford. There's two Harrisons. There's good Harrison and there's bad.
So I saw that version and I enjoyed it and thought it looked beautiful and was like a thought provoking film. And then I saw the director's cut and then the final cut, and I prefer like the final cut to the theatrical cut just because once you've seen it, you don't need the narration. And like I said, it's kind of lazy narration from Harrison Ford, so it doesn't really add a whole lot. And it does have the very unnecessary dropping of a racial slur. Not that he's using it in a negative sense, just to explain another character. But like, that did not age well.
Yeah, it wouldn't go over.
So I prefer the final cut to the original theatrical cut. And I think this movie, not even really much of a spoiler, I think this movie follows off from the director's final cut, not the original theatrical cut. Yeah. It's because those had slightly different endings.
So watch the final cut.
So watch the final cut before you watch this movie. And Julie, who I saw this with, had not seen the original because we had planned to watch it during the week, but she got busy and it didn't work out. And we'd already ordered the ticket, so I was like, well, I mean, I think it should. From what I've read, it is standalone, but it does have callbacks to the originals. And she, after the movie, she's like, I guess if I'd seen the original, I would have liked this more. Because she enjoyed like the cinematography and all that stuff and the acting. She's like, maybe I just got more from it if I had seen the original.
I think you will. Yeah, I think you absolutely will.
So I think like there's only a couple of touch point characters. I mean, Decker is like an important character, so you really need to know the history of that character. So I gave her like a quick 2-minute breakdown while we were in line to get snacks to explain what to expect going in.
And it's hard too because there's so much like thematically on the original films that what I mean, that you can bring to this like.
When
there's just so much to that original film. They both
kind of have that neo-noir type thing where there's not necessarily a super structured plot, kind of like Star Wars, like, okay, get from point A to point B to point B to point C.
This is more
of general investigation. Yeah,
but
it just sprawls out.
Is an investigation. Like, that's one thing I liked about this movie that a lot of detective movies don't do is like, this to me actually felt like somebody doing some detective work.
I think Harrison Ford has complained that he didn't do shit in the first film as far as detective work. Like he's like, I looked at a couple of photographs and stuff.
Yeah.
And then too in the first film, he mostly got his ass kicked by the replicants.
Yeah. Like so for me, Blade Runner, like as far as science fiction stuff goes, like that's it for me. Like that's like the Blade Runner, the original film, that is kind of fits into everything I love about science fiction and just big budget films, and like I like the pacing a lot. Yeah. Do I fall asleep watching it sometimes? Absolutely.
Yeah, but
at the same time, yeah, like it's I've got to like be kind of alert for it, but if I'm not in the right mood, I'll kind of doze off or whatever, but it's still like for me, like I'd watched I think the director's cut. I think I got a copy of that probably in high school. And then when the final cut came out, probably like 2007
Did you have any of the copies that came in the briefcase?
Yeah, I got that in 2007, the Blu-ray that came with the runner and the origami unicorn. I have that one. So, and I dug through all those special features, all that stuff. So like if you, as far as science fiction goes, like I would take this a million times over Star Wars because it's, it's just like my preference on I think aesthetics, just everything, like the pacing, like it's because I feel like I can dig into Blade Runner way more than I could those films. There's just like so many reasons to rewatch it. I've heard somebody make the point, like the first film, really the plot is pretty loose and it's almost like every scene is like trying to make thematic points, or there's like the subtext is actually what's going on,
Yeah.
So like for me watching this too, at the beginning of the year, I said my two most anticipated films were Baby Driver and this.
Yeah.
And also and a huge part because of Deakins and Denny
Villanueva.
Because I love Sicario, one of my favorite films that year. I think Fury Road came out that year as well. So it was like those two films were competing for me. And then I really liked Arrival as well. Prisoners was also good. I need to revisit that though. But at the same time, I wasn't allowing myself to get super excited for this because Blade Runner like means so much to me. I was like, I don't want to get too excited. Like Baby Driver, I could because it was like a new property. Yeah. It didn't have any baggage. This has like all that stuff. Like I've lived with Blade Runner for so long and watched it and thought about it. And read some stuff about it. Like,
there's the visual effect and the aesthetic effect of how it changed the way people shot sci-fi films.
Yeah, like
there's there's like, so Blade Runner and The Thing operate in the same area of they were underappreciated box office bombs at the time they came out from, a tour directors, Ridley Scott, John Carpenter, that in the years following their release were kind of reassessed and took on, more positive opinions. And now, and the difference too, though, is The Thing, there's not new cuts of it. That movie just is what it is. Yeah. And there's like 4K restorations of Blu-ray and stuff, whatever, but the actual story didn't change. On Blade Runner, there's these different versions where Ridley Scott, the director's cut and the final cut fundamentally change what the movie is compared to the theatrical cut with the Deckard as a replicant, or is he?
Ridley has always like said that he is a replicant, and Harrison Ford would always say he's not a replicant.
Yeah.
So there was always like at odds. And that's the fascinating thing about that film too, is like
it never even really gave you a clue of either way.
And we'll get into
there's arguments for both directions.
We'll get into spoilers on 2049 at the very end to discuss.
Well, I feel like we haven't discussed 2049 much.
So let's get into so just to right off the bat, the movie looks amazing, and it should win an Oscar for it.
I will say this is probably the most impressive visuals I feel like I say that a lot, but really I don't know if you can ever watch a movie that, like, I would have loved to have been in the set to see how they did some of these things. I want to know how they did. I
watched like this brief behind the scenes feature, and I think it was Roger Deakins was saying that his goal was for people to watch this movie and come away saying, well, how'd they get that shot?
Yeah, that's
because they practically, I think they had like green screen sets, but they had a lot of practical things built for the movie versus a CG fest like, George Lucas Star Wars prequel.
If there was CG in it, which obviously there was, it was done so well and like
naturalistically,
and it looked, because
obviously the cars don't fly in real life,
but like so it's a scene in the trailer. They're like in that orange building. Like, I'm explaining this from the trailer's point of view. Like Harrison Ford and I guess maybe Ryan Gosling, you see in the trailer, it's kind of orange and hazy, and they're in a building, and a runner comes through the window. Yeah. That was a real runner coming through the window and everything, and turning around. So it's like even that stuff is practical. Yeah,
like
obviously they're not like flying through the entire air, but
and that's part of the reason the production budget was $150 million.
And it's funny because I'm gonna kind of draw a parallel to two movies that are completely different but the same actor. Ryan Gosling kind of has a similar character arc in this as in Drive in a couple of different aspects.
Yeah.
And and I think like I don't know if you could have got a more perfect person to do that role than him.
No, yeah,
because
I've heard
like
a lot of people
he was.
complaining.
I don't see how you can complain because his character was awesome.
Well, his character was played very solemn and very quiet and very.
and it's hard to get into spoilers to talk about it too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like I didn't know, you don't know much about him, and I don't think we should delve into that.
Yeah,
too
we'll
much.
hold all of it for spoilers, but like. You with his character, I mean, when you think back to the original Blade Runner, Deckard was kind of a dick and wasn't very personable. And
but think about the type of job that they do.
no,
That's
yeah,
probably why.
I mean, it makes sense. But then, like in this movie, Ryan Gosling isn't that much different from Deckard in the original film. Like he doesn't have he has more characterization than Deckard did. I think.
a little bit.
I mean, some of the stuff with him and some of the characters you get to see him interact with, you get to see a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot
range
more
of emotion.
Like, he's not both. Deckard was a character that was very much alone. He was kind of a loner. Ryan Gosling's character, although he is somewhat a loner in some ways, and he does feel kind of alone in the world, you also get to see him interact a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of building from that. So I think it does bring on another fold of his character that you didn't really get to see.
And you don't see him being a borderline alcoholic, always like, oh, let's get a drink.
He does get drinks a lot, but it's still kind of there's a couple of scenes.
But
where
I think the movie keeps those kind of neo noir trappings, the original Blade Runner of a detective on a case.
But this too, it doesn't feel as much like a neo noir. It doesn't feel like as much of a noir film and kind of the mood and everything.
Yeah,
it does feel more of like a futuristic film, because it is, there's some dark moments, but even just the way Ridley Scott operates versus, he wants to operate his sets versus like the way Deacon's lights and Denny is allowing him to operate. Like even on Alien, Ridley Scott built all the lights into his set. You know what I mean? He lit it from practicals. And Blade Runner, that original film, you feel like you're in that world because some things are handheld. Everybody's being lit from the lights around the environment. This, it feels like, it almost feels a little detached. It is like a gorgeous film, and I absolutely love that they went a different style with it. But it almost has a different tone to it as well, just because, that original film was like really dark, like a noir film, and it just had that feel like it was always raining, and there's rain in this and everything too, but this kind of goes in a little bit different direction, like where it does feel like it's a little bit removed because it has been 30 years. The world's changed.
You have
the tone has kind of changed.
Yeah, you can't have the same thing.
The story has the same kind of trappings of, detective on the case.
Yeah.
And then I think that this movie, even though Ridley Scott didn't direct this, he was the producer of it. He wasn't credited as one of the writers or anything. It's all still based on a Philip K. Dick novel.
Yeah, which I think most people who are diehard fans of the movie probably wouldn't like the book as much.
That's what I always hear because I read parts of it,
it's
but I'm
much different.
Yeah.
And not gonna get into it. I will drop another podcast real quick. If you ever want to not read the book but learn about it, there's a podcast called Heroes and Villains, and this guy Bruce will go on there and pick characters from everything. And he did Deckard, and he did the comparison of the movie version and the book version. So if you're interested in Blade Runner and you want to know a little bit of backstory, maybe you don't want to go watch the movie, go to Heroes and Villains. It's one of his earlier he's got several hundred on there, but it's one of the early ones, and check it out. And it might be something interesting for you two to check out, just because Bruce is really thorough and breaks down. I think he has another guest on there too, but it's really interesting. Breaks down the movie version and the book version, how different they are. So I think that's something that if you're interested in this and you haven't seen the original and you want to go see this, maybe just listen to the podcast and then check the film out, because you have less time investment listening to the podcast.
But it seems like this movie is a lot of the same thematic territory that Ridley Scott wanted to cover with Prometheus and Alien Covenant,
but couldn't
with
do it.
David, the android stuff. So it feels like this is taking those kind of basic concepts that he was interested in, and some of them are pretty directly the same idea being discussed, which we'll discuss in spoilers. But
it's some of the ideas discussed in other films as well. You know what I mean? Like it's hard. That's why I think 30 years would be a good time to do another one.
Well, and two though, like a good part of it though is the idea is so those Alien Covenant Alien Covenant more specifically, some of the topics it covered, while still like in the horror subgenre, the sci-fi horror film had all the aliens and all the murders and brutal deaths. So this movie is kind of stripped away of all those super genre-esque elements and more focused on the story aspect. I mean, it still has like sci-fi trappings and stuff, but the sci-fi trappings aren't the point.
Well,
and,
yes.
yeah,
I mean,
and Blade
it's
Runner.
The point as far as like that's what it's about the future.
Well,
you know
the
what I mean?
the
That's why,
replicant
yeah.
stuff, but the actual like the other technology is not really a focus.
Yeah.
And the emotional aspects of it, like I do think you're right on that. Like this does everything Alien Covenant wanted to do in the right way. Like this makes you feel for the characters. You understand their motivations.
And to be fair, though, Ridley Scott already did that in Blade Runner. You know what I mean? Like with the replicants and that, like he is already. I think he was like is still very interested in that, and probably wasn't allowed to pull it off in the way he wanted to, and that's why his recent comments were like, the next one's going to be about androids because he's obviously way more interested in that
because
he has
it's
xenomorphs
basically
going around
just
killing
like
people.
Unfortunately, I don't think anybody who wants to pay you money is interested.
But to be fair, I mean, The Martian was a great film. Like, I think his hands are probably kind of tied with Alien Covenant.
Well, I think they
the
should
Alien
be, 'cause
franchise, I think they're a little tied.
Well, I think that having the alien name in it kind of required them to do more of the alien stuff. But back like on Blade Runner, like so without doing spoilers, like the movie, like it doesn't have a defined like 3-act structure really. I mean, maybe it does.
I mean,
you kind of have like the
different because you go through so many different.
Because you kind of have the opening of the investigation, then like you find some of the information that sends him off on furthering the investigation, and then he gets to a certain location that kind of sets off the third act stuff. So there is like a general 3-act structure, but it's kind of a sprawling movie where there's not a lot of necessary plot set up. It's more of just discovery of information and secrets. And, the replicants in this are much more prevalent and around than they were in the original Blade Runner. Because you have the Jared Leto character who, instead of being the Tyrell Corporation, it's Wallace. And he has created new replicants that are... this is all in the first 5 minutes of the movie. There's replicants who actually obey orders and don't rebel like the ones from the Tyrell Corporation that set off the events of the original Blade Runner. So
and that's also in the short films, those 3 short films, because he's in one of those, and they kind of explain some of that.
So you have like the basic idea is they're more prevalent in use because somebody was able to create a way to make them behave and not fight back. So there's more replicants in the world and things like that. So I mean, that aspect is interesting, and there's, more of the commercialization of replicants is kind of touched on a little bit, because in the original Blade Runner, they were just used for, like, off-world slave labor, and then the new movie, not only are they used for that, but there's other menial tasks that they are used for. There's, like, an AI system called Joy, which is, like, a holographic system that plays somewhat into things. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting that they're talking more about it as a consumer product versus just basically slave labor.
And Pris from the original was like a pleasure bot too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the original, they were they had been sent off world because I think they were like too risky, essentially.
Yeah.
But like, so for me, again, this is like one of my most anticipated films of the year because of the director, it being Blade Runner, but also wasn't getting too excited about it because I didn't want to be heartbroken. But like, as soon as the text came up on the screen, like giving the backstory, like all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, oh my God, this is a new Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I'm watching a new effing Blade Runner. Like I couldn't believe it.
Which is something you probably wouldn't have thought would have happened maybe even a couple years ago.
But even still, like it didn't hit me until I was actually sitting there and it had started. And 2, like I was almost a little stunned throughout the entire film. Like I walked out of the theater, initial reactions was just like, okay. Like I didn't honestly know what to think. Like I really enjoyed it. But I was just like, this is a film I'm going to have to watch many more times.
Yeah, I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, like again, I can't get to the theaters because, I have a newborn now. And
it's a big time commitment. That's
the hard part too, yeah. But I really, really want to go again and see it a couple more times. I would like to. I don't think I'll be able to, but...
real quick, not to cut you off, but the only recommendation I have, and I don't usually do this, watch it in XD. Because
the sound, right? the 2D,
3D is okay. It just personally gives me a headache.
On Roger Deakins' website, he recommends the 2D. Like
but
IMAX
I will say,
or
like a lot of times, I don't think you get a whole lot more out of film watching these different things. But the ambiance you get on that huge screen, the better sound system, it really just makes this movie.
Because the sound design
experience.
is amazing.
Like it is. It's really incredible.
Honestly, after watching this too, I've started looking at 4K TVs again because I think when this comes out,
it almost would be.
I'm probably gonna get a 4K TV and upgrade if I can afford it.
So here's the thing, though. I have a 4K TV.
I mean, like a 65 inch.
But in order to get real 4K content to your TV, because even the Netflix stuff, it's still streaming over the internet. And I don't know that you get super noticeable improvements in quality.
I'm gonna get a good player and the 4K.
But the
disc.
4K Blu-rays are relatively scarce at this point.
No, have you been to Best Buy? They've got like probably
20, William.
Well, I mean,
I don't know. They're probably like 40 or 60 now.
The number of movies available on it?
Yeah, there's tons now.
Well, the thing that's
all of the Fast and Furious films are available
the new Apple TV is going to have 4K, and if you've already bought movies via Apple TV, you'll have the 4K versions too.
Yeah.
And I think they're supposed to keep the prices the same, but it's still like compressed and stuff. But
yeah,
I mean, my TV is not super big, so the 4K
to get the
is not
advantage, you
super
have to be sitting close to it. You know, there's like that size chart where it has to be so big as so many feet. But anyway, just because the visuals are so
the
good.
visuals and the sound and everything.
It's a different feel. I think the nod goes for sound on the original film or the score.
Yeah.
This one is good. It builds on that, but it's nothing groundbreaking.
So it has like
is it Hans Zimmer?
Because it has like a lot of synthy type music in it, but it's not overbearing or teetering on the kind of like horror films now, like, and even we've used like synth music where it's kind of like the John Carpenter-esque inspired synth. It's not really that. It's more
like Beverly Hills.
I mean,
Cop
they use the tunes and stuff from the original. And
Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfish were the composers.
The original, it was so strong in that film, and sometimes it really was amped up, and it's very good in this film. It just isn't anything super new like the visuals in this film do,
it complements. It doesn't really break any new ground, but there's nothing to complain about.
Yes, absolutely.
Because Julie is not a big fan of synth scores, but she said that she enjoyed that one and thought it fit the movie and it wasn't overdone to the point of being kind of genre kitsch.
Yeah. I was basically like, walked out the theater like, I don't really know like what to think yet because I'd watched the other film so many times. I lived with it with all these years. Like, I'm going to have to live with this for 10 years. And like, it's hard to even say what is all going on in this film or what a lot of the subtext is right now, at least for me.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we have another discussion in a year or 6 months if the disc comes out.
Yeah.
If there's like, I feel like there's a lot to be mined out of this film, just like the original. So that's why it's hard to draw any direct comparisons to it, I think, on certain levels, because it's something to kind of be discovered, and I've only seen it once so far.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess what we can do is like give general thoughts on all the movie, because there's a lot of stuff we have to hold to spoilers.
Yes, yeah.
So in terms of the overall movie, like the visuals and the sound and everything, to me are both 10 out of 10s, and all the acting is really great too. There's not, even though I know Derek, you're not a big Jared Leto fan,
He's poop.
Especially later day Leto from like Suicide Squad and stuff where,
and it's just being a normal human. When you hear the things that he does, it's just like you just want to slap him.
Well, talking to people who are actors and who do theater and stuff, like method acting, like it is what it is, but he seems to take it to a comical degree.
Yeah, it's like
on Suicide Squad, he was like sending people use condoms and stuff when he's a Joker.
Maybe he's shooting behind like a comedy film that's documentary, so like Bo Rats, all these years, but he's trolling all the films he's working on. He's going to release it as like a Bo Rat type film. That would be great, though, wouldn't it?
I still think he's redeemable.
If you've seen the any of the trailers for Blade Runner, you know that his character is supposed to be blind, and apparently when they're shooting on set, he temporarily blinded himself to get into character. It's like, come on, man. Come on.
But also, side note, I like that it's raining, very apropos for Blade Runner right now.
Yeah.
It's drizzling outside.
So,
I have a Blade Runner umbrella that lights up, but I couldn't find it because I was actually going to use it today.
But so all the acting is good too. It's the big knock on it is that it's 2 hours and like 44 minutes, so it's a little long.
But none of it's useless.
I mean,
I don't see that as a knock personally.
Well, I'm just saying, like, as a
average moviegoer,
people complain.
So Blu-ray and DVD, or it hits Blu-ray, whatever. That's fine because you can hit pause and use the restroom. But I made the mistake of getting a large Coke, so I'd use the restroom twice during the course of the movie. Luckily, I was able to miss like a minute or less because the restroom was close to the theater. So I was able to get to the restroom and get back and not miss anything. But the length could be an issue for some people. And that's not really a knock on the movie. That's just like something to know going into the experience. But the acting and all that stuff. There wasn't like the story was more of just discovery of this plot. And if you've seen the original film, it was pretty obvious what they were going for relatively early on.
That's the thing, too. Yeah, some of the stuff that was unfolding in the film, and that's why I think it'll be better for me on rewatches, too, is because so much of what was happening, I was kind of like, would assume, and then it would happen 20 minutes later.
Yeah.
And also it treads on some thematic things that's happened in another big film that came out within the recent past couple of years. It changes things a lot. We can talk about it in spoilers and how it does that. And also too, the opening scene, like, it's been known that was a cut scene from the original film, and I kind of knew where that was going. We can talk about that in spoilers, but like, you know, they announced that way before, like, oh, this scene that was cut from the original is now going to be in this. Like, a lot of those things I enjoyed, but also it almost was like, you know what I mean, at first.
Yeah.
But I think on multiple rewatches it's going to be fine, because now that I know the story, now I can really watch it again and really kind of start digging into like the film and like hopefully not being as awe throughout the entire time.
So I guess we can go through and give like our final thoughts and our score, and then move into spoilers. There's a lot to discuss. So for me, like I said, the visuals and all that alone give, even if the plot and you hate the characters, the movie's an 8 just on visuals and sound. And then if it, you know, to me, the story and all that stuff did connect. So I think it's like, you know, 9. It's something I definitely need to rewatch. I enjoyed watching everything unfold. I mean, it's a long movie, but I never really got bored. And I know some people who hadn't seen, because I know Julie's hit points, she got a little bit bored with it, just because, like I said, if you've seen the original, you know where some of the stuff is going,
and you know the pacing of the original too. You know what you're prepared for. You know,
so it's
and things to kind of like think about, like the reason why it's slow.
And that's a movie too. Like with Raw, it's not for everybody, because I can see that, you know, if somebody's, you know, there's a lot of crossover, I'm sure, of fans who could love Star Wars The Force Awakens and love Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But then there's also a large portion of Star Wars Force Awakens fans who won't like Blade Runner 2049.
But to that end, to me, I think Blade Runner 2049 was just making a sequel. They weren't. I don't think this was a franchise-building movie. I don't think that was the
it's not
intent.
a super commercialized
Whereas Star
sequel.
Wars, I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I feel
It's
like
a product.
I feel
Runner-
like the second one we get from this will be better than the first.
Well, like Blade Runner is not a 4-quadrant family film to make mom, dad, and the kids happy. It is, you know, a serious film that is a, you know, more hardcore sci-fi and things like that. So, Derek, what would you give this?
What was your score?
So I gave it a 9.
You know, I really feel like this is probably one of the best years in just movies, because I've seen so many good ones. Like after, you know, I haven't seen Split. But almost from January to now, it seems
Get
like
Out, Logan.
Yeah, we've had so many good
great
movies.
genre films. Genre films that are Oscar awards nominated, you know, something I think could be eligible for Oscars and definitely are in, you know, good as some of those movies.
Like, to me, this falls right in that Logan territory of like, there's so much stuff about love. It's not a perfect 10. There's just a little bit of, and this is minuscule stuff to knock it down. To me, I feel like it's a 9.5. The only, you know, like the length doesn't bother me. Because honestly, like I was telling Sean before the podcast, this movie could have been 3.5 hours long, and I would have sit there and watched it.
Same here.
I never got bored. It just is that one kind of thing. Is, you know, when you're watching, it's like it's 2.5 hour mark. You're like, damn, this keeps going. So no, but you're not used to that.
Daniel.
You know, like most movies nowadays. You know, I mean, you're used to superheroes hitting 2 hours, but superhero movies hitting 2 hours. But you had it hit 2 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I mean, I loved almost everything about it, and I didn't really know if I was going to like this movie or not. So I don't know if that made me like it more, because I didn't really have any kind of impressions on it either way. But yeah, to me, 9.5. I mean, I think this is easily one of the best of the year.
So yeah, it's a weird thing. Like I said, I have to watch it a lot more, because my mind is starting to like maybe formulate opinion just barely. But as I was walking out, I'm like, thank God the podcast isn't tomorrow. And actually, I was almost trying to think of a way to watch it again before the podcast, because there's just so much.
There's a lot to digest.
And I'm like, I'm gonna have to watch this a lot more. And that is actually what I wanted. Like, I wanted a film that, you know, made me question stuff and made me have to think about it.
Yeah.
Because that's what the original film was. Like, I didn't want a film that was like spoon fed.
This doesn't support. Yeah.
You know, and I can't compare right now to the original, because it's not a film like, say, I love those films, but John Wick and John Wick 2. It's a little bit easier to compare those two films and say which one you like more.
It's kind
Blade
of
Runner. You can't do that with yet.
No.
I can't do it yet, because I haven't put in as much time as a sequel as I have that original.
Well, I mean,
film.
it's almost kind of like, you know, there's differences here. It's almost like Twin Peaks, or Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an evolution of the original and goes even a little bit more obscure and a little bit more into, you know, different ideals. Because the first Blade Runner was the original theatrical cut is more of a straightforward kind of sci-fi film that has these different undertones, and then the other cuts of it add in more subtext and, you know, ambiguity. And this, you know, goes even a little bit further in that direction. But
So yeah, saying all that too, like walking out again, I was just kind of in awe watching the entire film, and my mind was going at a million different places, and I focusing on a million different things. Deakins, his cinematography, like what plot points meant for the series, for the previous film. Like I don't think they could have really done a better job on the film, but like I didn't want to give it a score, but again, this operates on a different level for me. Blade Runner is like, here's all these other films. If I give a 10 out of 10, I'm going to give this like probably a 9 out of 10 right now, but it's still my favorite film of the year. There's other films I've given 10 out of 10, but I need to watch it more to figure out where I exactly
Well, I mean,
am
I'm
on
saying,
it. But it's above everything else, but like there's this weird thing where it's like I don't really exactly know my opinion of it completely yet to like, give it a solid score.
Like there's something I can say, like I gave it. Do I think that Get Out is better than this? No, but I still think Get Out deserved the 10 out of 10.
It's for what it is.
I get what you're saying.
Because you can say that something is a more enjoyable just sit down and watch it film.
That's another
more
thing, too.
immediate, immediate satisfaction.
Yes.
Versus like, okay, this is a deeper film that requires more attention and more rewatch and is immediately satisfying.
Yeah, I don't know where all my satisfaction is going to land. I know I was immensely satisfied watching it, but I don't know where it's going to land.
Because it's one of those things where you can sit here and say like, oh, pizza is the food that you can eat and get the most immediate enjoyment, and so you might enjoy pizza more than a lot of meals that you would say are actually better food.
Yeah. Yes.
But
it's kind of like comparing like, okay, immediate satisfaction versus like this,
and even still one watch. Yeah, this is my favorite film of the year. Bar none. I'm trying to think of anything that like comes close to it, and it doesn't. But that's at that same point. I'm not saying this is like the end all be all.
Do you like this more than Twin Peaks: The Return?
Oh shit! Well, that's the thing. I had a lot of time to think about Twin Peaks. We talked about it every week. I don't know yet. You know what I mean? Like
brain broken.
Yeah, I don't. I didn't even think about that. I'll have to watch this a lot more.
So in both cases, you're getting
Twin
material.
Peaks. I mean, they elevated. I mean, David Lynch and Mark Frost. What they did with that show. Yeah, like right now, that probably still has the nod. Maybe I would say,
but it's hard to compare a TV series.
It is. It's two different things.
But, so now we're going to move into spoiler discussions for Blade Runner 2049, and make sure to leave a review via iTunes if you're listening that way, or you can leave comments on YouTube. You can find all of our releases and everything about our social media account and everything on houseofvideostore.com. We have links there to our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything we do you can find there. And make sure to follow us on all those platforms. You can see our new short film, After the Slasher, on YouTube. You can also view our Facebook page. It was an official selection for the 15-second horror film challenges Fright Days, where they combine a couple of full-length short films together and share them on Fridays. So it's selected for that. So you can see that on our Facebook page. We have that shared via there. And like I said, you can find all this stuff at houseofvideostore.com. It was really recently refreshed, so it's nice and new and clean, so you can check that out. But yeah, now we'll move into our spoilers of Blade Runner 2049. So
Gosling is a replicant.
Yeah.
And I saw people, I actually kind of thought that might have been happening, but I kind of forgot because somebody pointed out in the trailer they saw him busting through that wall with Harrison Ford. But I kind of forgot because I was trying to forget all this stuff. And then the opening scene is what was cut from the original film, which was going to be Deckard, like somebody coming into a farmhouse, Deckard sitting there in the darkness, the pot of boiling water. And they have a little dialogue exchange, or I guess the one guy says a couple things. Derek shoots him, rips his jaw off, and it has the number in there. Like that was going to be the original opening. So this is a little bit different, but I kind of knew that was going to happen. So it was a bit of a bummer. Like, you know what I mean? Because I already knew, like, okay, he's going to kill this guy. He's hunting him. He's going to kill him and take his, and granted, more stuff happens with that. But I thought the opening scene was great. Like, it was awesome knowing out of the gate. Well, you kind of knew out of the gate that he was a replicant because he was so strong.
It was confirmed within like the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, like he was so strong, he got thrown through the wall, but then he was able to fight back, and I'm like, oh, okay, he is a replicant, so...
A newer model.
Yeah, it was nice that they didn't kind of hide that too much because again, it's hidden with Deckard. Is he a replicant or not? So it was nice that we didn't have that question again with Ryan Gosling.
So-
I wasn't worrying about that all.
So, mentioning who's a replicant. So this movie did not confirm that Deckard was either.
Yeah, I thought it was at one point when he was living in the wasteland, but that doesn't necessarily mean that.
Well, because they
radiation
went
is still
through,
there.
the radiation is said normal, so like it wasn't
Oh,
nominal.
that's right. Yeah,
It said it was nominal.
Yeah.
Which question? Now that because I only seen the original Blade
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner once. Was that like a throwback to some of the original locations?
No.
Okay,
So
this is all
that
new
was
places.
Vegas, and then the junkyard was San Diego.
Okay.
And you basically stayed in
L.A. in the original.
L.A. in the original,
Yeah.
and then like one of the cuts you see them driving into the woods.
Because I
which think
kind of,
the
like I
director's
said,
cut.
I've only ever seen the original once,
Yeah.
so I'm not extremely familiar with it. I kind of thought that was like that Harrison Ford's kind of like your Deckard's in the place at the Tyrell Corporation.
So that was supposed to be whatever the war. What was it called? Something war, and I think that was supposed to happen at least in the book before the movie was set. I don't know if they talked about it in the original
Well, there was like
movie.
a dirty bomb that got set off in Vegas.
So that's kind of where that's set at, and they don't really go outside of L.A.
Yeah.
From my memory in that first one. Like, again, one of the cuts they drive off into the woods, which was a shot they took from The Shining. Stanley Kubrick gave them.
Because there's the scene with Deckard with when he's with Wallace, Jared Leto's character, and he's talking about maybe you were designed to meet Rachel and to have all
again,
that.
it just opens more questions.
And then he's like, if you were.
Yeah.
So he doesn't confirm that Deckard is necessary.
Yeah.
But then he also says that off-world they have everything they need to get the information. But once again, that doesn't necessarily confirm that he's a replicant.
It could just mean that he's going to he can't torture people on the world, so he's taking him off the world and torturing.
Yeah.
So, because of, different laws, or they have, instrumentation out there that can do things. So it doesn't 100% confirm or deny that he is a replicant. It just confirms that Rachel is able to have a child.
Yeah, which I think is smart that they didn't like double down and do that with Ryan Gosling's character, and that his story felt fresh because he was a replicant. So now we're flipped on another perspective. And the thing that I said it was like it felt too much like another movie at first was the movie Her. Did you guys watch that?
No, I need to watch it.
It's so good. Spike Jonze.
I kept forgetting.
Basically, what's his name? Oh my gosh.
Joaquin
Phoenix. He basically falls in love with Siri.
Yeah, I know it is.
It's again deals with some of the same themes. You know what I mean? Like what it is to be human. Like what is love even? So I was getting a lot of vibes of that, but this does that other fold where it's almost like she is almost less real than him, but still does she feel real love? Because it's like a replicant falling in love with another.
Oh, joy.
Another. I guess manufactured
artificial being.
Yeah, AI. So I really like that aspect though, that it kind of changed it on its head. If I'd never seen Her or heard of that movie, I would have been kind of blown away by that aspect. But that also kind of set me back a little bit because it's like, this is territory that's a little worn. But again, him being a replicant was like another fold to it that I thought was interesting.
Like the Star Wars Force Awakens, it's also another movie within the past couple of years where a major plot point is that Harrison Ford's character has a kid that's integral to some future situation.
But one thing I kind of like too, where you can draw lines to like Force Awakens, is like where they're different. Is like Rey is the chosen one in a way, but you don't know who's her.
Yeah.
You don't know her parentage. Whereas Ryan Gosling's character Kay, throughout the movie, you thought that he was the child. Which then all that unravels, and it was told in a really smart way because maybe I was just oblivious. I didn't pick that up.
So
I don't think you were. I thought maybe, okay, is this true? Is this really happening because of implanted memories and all that stuff? And I really love that because in so many films like this, there's always the chosen one, and that's who you're following. Like The Force Awakens, and it's like this old trope, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh wait, he isn't the chosen one. You know what I mean? And he's a cog in the machine, but it's also about his journey of having like his own identity and being able to make his own choices,
developing
and that was
purpose.
And that is also just as important to the story as opposed to the other story of like, they're being replicants that can reproduce.
He almost gets on, he almost turns it into a suicide mission because when he's with the kind of rebels that save him from like the Vegas thing after the corporation comes and takes away Deckard, he's told about how the most human thing you can do is to, sacrifice yourself for a cause.
Yeah.
And I think he kind of takes that to heart when he realizes that he is not the child. Because I think everybody would want to be special and be like, I'm the exception to the rule, not the rule. So I think that, it's even pointed out to him, like, well, everybody wishes it was them.
Yeah.
But then, that kind of gives him a little bit a different purpose. And the fact, and two, trying to say,
But
like,
he still goes from. He does the opposite of what they told him to do too.
no, they told him to go kill Decker so that he couldn't reveal the location or give them any clues
Yeah, and he
to
didn't.
find, Decker's daughter or the kind of group of rebels, and then Kay or Joe goes and saves Decker and takes him to see his daughter. And says, tells him, he's like, you're dead. You died out here. So now you're free to see your daughter. So once again, Deckard's fate is kind of left ambiguous, similar to the first Blade Runner.
And I mean, what about Kay, or let's just call him Ryan Gosling, because I'll keep going back and forth. His character, like at the end, we don't necessarily know that he dies, but he is injured.
But
you
to
know
me,
what I mean?
this is
Like,
where I say this goes back to Drive, and there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah,
Between,
he's stabbed in the chest.
In the same two movies. He kills Ron Perlman, kind of in the same way he kills the evil woman in this movie. Similar
In the water.
situation on the beach in the water, chokes him on both, gets stabbed, which what appears to be by most accounts maybe a fatal wound or a severe wound. I do like the ambiguity that it has at the end where you don't really know, like, does he live, does he die? And I think that plays well. Like,
So
I would
basically, he served the purpose he set out. Like once he readjusted his purpose after finding out he wasn't
he
the
set
child.
his own purpose and his
Yes.
own course. So another thing that was pointed out that I didn't really catch, Mark Millar on Twitter, which was a little bit of a spoiler, he was talking about how the doctor that manufactures memories for replicants.
Yeah.
One, it's snowing outside with Ryan Gosling, and he's feeling that snow, and you can try to draw from all that, like, is he feeling like his AI partner felt rain for the first time outside? Is this him kind of realizing, like, feeling himself that he actually feels more like a human now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also too, apparently she was creating snow inside.
Yeah.
And what does that mean really? Like, is she linked to him and sharing? Somebody said that she is linked to all the other replicants, and is that how she implants their memories? But they said, like, what does that signify that she's in there creating snow? Is she trying to share part of his memory now, what he's going through, or what does that mean? There's snow on the inside
because they
too, and
obviously
the
have some
outside.
type of connection.
Yes,
He went
yeah.
to
So the other
earlier
thing
for the
too
dream.
is, so his memory, the kind of key memory he has, is one of her memories.
Yeah.
And so was it implanted purposely by her for him to serve a greater purpose, or is it just random chance?
I think it was just random.
that he is somebody that had that memory and got set on that.
I don't know. I almost feel like it wasn't random chance. Not for sure though, but also too, like, yeah, she knew, she lied to him, but she knew that it wasn't implanted because that was her own memory, and that's why she was upset, because she realized that was her own memory, and maybe she didn't know, because that's why she kind of got emotional.
Well, I think to me, I think this is just a random chance.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well,
think
no,
that there
actually,
was-
because otherwise you would have think that she would have more awareness of who he was from the
Yeah.
get-go and not have had that reaction when
Yeah,
she
that's
checked the
true.
memory.
Yeah.
So,
But it is nice to see Ryan Gosling's character go from very not robotic.
I mean, that's
but
what he is. He
Yeah.
plays like very much a docile.
Yeah, but then like you
compliant.
can, but from that moment when he gets that mirror confirmed that it's real, he breaks emotionally.
Yeah.
And I think from that point on, he's essentially a human.
Yeah, which is a great, great. I think awesome performance.
And then like he fails the baseline
test.
test. Yeah.
So like you're way off baseline.
So real quick too, the breakdown of the replicants. So the Nexus 6 was the ones in the first film that Decker was hunting that had the 4-year lifespan.
Yeah.
Nexus 7 was the anomaly. That was Rachel, who could reproduce, made by Tyrell.
Yeah.
She was, I think, by herself. The 8s were made with no expiration date, and they were manufactured before that blackout. That blackout
So
happened.
Dave Bautista is one.
Yes,
of them.
and he's one of them. So, and I guess that would also be like, okay, well, is Deckard like a 7 also? Is he a Nexus 7 that has no expiration date? Because I think Rachel also didn't have one apparently or something, because she just died in childbirth. So, and that blackout, William, happened like I think in 2022.
Yeah, something like that.
So shortly after that, and that blackout happened because there was a replicant registration, and all the replicants basically rebelled. Some of them did, and they basically went to wipe out all the information. So everybody was essentially set free of any registration. And then the 9s are Ryan Gosling, the supposedly docile. The 9s were made by Wallace, and the rest were the ones made by Tyrell.
Because they had taken like the remnants of the Tyrell Corporation and then made the compliant, obedient replicants that did not rebel.
Another thing about Tyrell, you've got that big pyramid he lives in, and now Wallace has done that. And almost the inside is more Egyptian.
Yeah.
And, he talks about I mean, you think about that being basically slaves that build the pyramid, you know, like that's kind of what he has. And also too, there's a lot of parallels to angels and everything. And the prodigal son of, in the original Blade Runner, of kind of rebelling against their creators. So in this too, he talks about they should be out through all these other planets. So essentially, like, you know, their angels should be populating the stars and the other planets. So it's, you know, there's a lot of parallels again with this, that there's subtext in the original that they're kind of bringing out in front in this film.
Because, you know, like Wallace talks about wanting, you know, he considers like the replicants like his children. He wants more. He wants, you know, millions or billions or trillions more of them to, you know, do more than they've done.
And to set out across the world. It's almost like he, you know, wants to populate them throughout the universe. But it's almost this kind of the same, somewhat the same plan as the rebellious group. I'm trying to think of the name of, I think I wrote it down. Frieza, the leader of the replicants, that has like the one eye missing. I mean, she basically kind of wants the same thing as well. You know what I mean? Like they have similar goals, just different ways methods to go about it. Yeah. Another thing linking her and kind of Wallace and just Blade Runner in general, like eyes have always been really important. Like the original film started out, you know, early on with a shot of the eye and the city in reflection. This has a shot of the eye early on. Ridley Scott was always said like the eyes are the windows to the soul. So it does have to do with like if people have souls, and that's how you identify the replicants, you know, so they're pulling their eyes out. I guess she maybe had pulled out her eye so she couldn't be identified. Yeah. It also made me think about Wallace. Why is he blind? And the glimmers in the eyes from the original Blade Runner let you know who was a replicant because they had a little shimmer in there. I was watching that short, and Wallace almost seemed like he had the shimmer in there. It could be totally different, but it's like, is Wallace also almost like a fallen angel of Tyrell? Like, could he been a replicant? Yeah. And, you know, went on to forge his own path, and now is kind of rebelling against Tyrell, and then not being like, you know, not having the same goals, but having his own goals.
And two, his children were the replicants, not a biological child that he fathered with anyone.
Yeah, yeah.
And he, you know, he had like, and two, with the eyes, it could be that, you know,
like, why wouldn't he have prosthetic eyes? Everybody there, like,
well, but he had the connections and used the drones.
I'm saying, like, there's something, you know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting that eyes are so important, and maybe he is blind.
He wanted to be more than human and have more capability.
Yes, who knows?
So there's a lot of stuff like, I mean, there's
there's a million things to watch on this film, watch the original film, and kind of try to draw parallels to.
And, you know, like the other thing too is they did a good job of making the tech in this one not look like Prometheus. If you watch Prometheus and Alien back to back, it's like Prometheus has super shiny, ultra futuristic design UIs and technology, and there's almost seemingly no way that happened prior to the events of the original Alien. And this is a sequel that takes place years, you know, in the future, but they do keep enough design elements that, you know, because in Robin Wright's character in her office, the police monitors look kind of just like a little bit better versions of CRT monitors. Yeah. So they do a good job of just iterating.
I like her character a lot in this, although she didn't have a whole lot to do.
But she was an interesting character because her idea was if everybody knew that replicants could create life, then that would kind of break the wall between replicants and humans in terms of, you know, the basic differences that are still left. And then that would devolve into chaos and could, you know, cause rebellions or, you know, war or all kinds of stuff. So she was worried about the public knowing and it changing the status quo. And then the other groups want to change the status quo in a different way. So all that, you know, is very fascinating. And once again, like the Decker stuff, you're not guaranteed, you don't get a definitive answer as to whether or not he's a replicant. I mean, you can assume he is.
Yeah, I honestly think I'm at the opinion that I think he probably is, but I also think that they don't want to, even though that may be kind of what they've decided on, possibly, because I saw an interview too with Harrison Ford, because, you know, he was always at odds with Ridley Scott about it, and he said, "Oh, we've came to agreement," but I'm not going to say. I have a feeling that they've just agreed that he probably is, but. Or maybe they've agreed like, hey,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that's what I think the big thing is. It doesn't matter. What matters is that Rachel was able to have a child. Yeah. He just happens to be the one, you know. But it, you know, that the final cut does lead to, especially the Edward James Olmos character, Gaff. You know, him leaving the origami of and him seeing the unicorn in his dreams and stuff, it implies that he knows what his dreams are. And he shows up in this film as well, and he leaves a little sheep origami. And I wasn't for sure, the androids dream of electric sheep. I wasn't for sure, but somebody pointed out that maybe he was telling Ryan Gosling's character that at this point he's being a sheep. He's following orders.
Yeah.
But after that point, he kind of breaks free, and the horse memories may symbolize also that he is almost like free, like a horse runs, and he's kind of broken free of his programming prior to that. I mean, there's a million things we talk about forever, but like there's probably a million things I would get wrong if I brought up a lot of things too, because I've only seen it once.
Well, there's a lot of things to break down, but I mean, I think we touched on all the major kind of things, and two, just like compare the art design of this to the Ghost in the Shell movie. And
this is what Ghost in the Shell wanted to be.
I mean, I still really enjoyed the visual of Ghost in the Shell. It was just trying to replicate something that it was already done.
Yeah.
Where Deakins even said, I'm not going to have a lot of fog, light cutting through fog and all this stuff. And I really appreciate that they made something totally standalone.
The visual look.
Yeah, because
we've
seen that before.
Because there's still neon lighting, there's still rain. But the movie looks vastly different than the first one while still feeling like part of the same universe.
Yes, absolutely.
So
it just feels like 30 years.
Evolution.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff to break down, but I think we covered enough of the spoilers.
Yeah,
now.
like I said, maybe we'll dig into it. Maybe we can dig into another episode of full on talking about the original Blade Runner and the sequel.
Yeah,
if there's a lot to do, in 6 months or whenever we've got the disc and we can look at it
real
some
quick,
more.
did Ryan Gosling's character live or die in your interpretation of it?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think he probably could have lived. I think if they wanted to make a sequel, he lived.
That's the big thing. I think they want to do a sequel. What do you think?
So I think that...
I mean, it was a parallel to the original, the final speech, like, tears in the rain and the dove, like it was, I felt like it was parallel to that immediately when I was watching it.
I think the idea of whether or not he lives or dies is not super important because I think he readjusted what his goals were and he accomplished it. And he was just kind of taking in the environment and, like he did what he planned to do.
Maybe being human maybe feeling like a human for the first time.
Yeah, feeling as if, because he was told like, sacrificing for a goal is the most human thing he can do. So he realized maybe he was like just kind of reveling in the fact that he felt like he made his own choices and his own decisions. It wasn't part of a machine and a plan and wasn't compliant. He did, made his own choice and did something.
Yeah.
So just kind of taking that in. I mean, I would think he probably died, but
also too, I mean, he is a replicant. I know he is stronger. You know what I mean? Like
it's super easy for him to survive. If there's never another Blade Runner or nothing else that comes of Blade Runner, then his fate, I think, is more leaning towards dying.
Yeah.
Because there's more finality to the story.
On a thematic level, probably.
It's kind of reminiscent of like Children of Men, the ending of that movie.
Yeah.
Which is another movie you should go watch if you haven't. So I think, I think he probably died, but I could very easily see him living for if there's future properties because he kind of served his mission that he came up with on his own. Yeah. Because he wasn't taking anyone's orders. He came up with his own plan.
Yeah.
So to me, it was indicating like he was being
served
human.
his own purpose and
he had seen or was aware of a miracle like Dave Bautista's character mentioned the earlier part of the movie. So, he kind of was as human as humans.
Yeah. I would say that I would probably take it as maybe what Sean said, like there's a sequel. I definitely think he lives. I think you want to keep a big name actor in there, but I would think that leaning toward the way the movie worked to me, like I can see either way, but I'm going to go with maybe that he lived.
His story is maybe done and now it is whatever happens with Deckard and his daughter. You know what I mean? Like Ryan Gosling maybe is close.
If there's like future stories, he could be a background character.
Yeah, I'm saying I kind of see it. Not to make another Star Wars analogy, but when you first meet Han Solo and he talks about Luke Skywalker being a myth, all that stuff exists.
Yeah,
like I could see him just being in the mythos and nobody really knowing if they go for it. Because I don't think that, in my opinion, if they do a sequel to this, I don't know if you should touch any of this other stuff. I think maybe you'd have to tell another story in the universe.
Again, I wish it was like 30 years on. You know what I mean? Like, and you deal with a whole other layer of thematic things to touch
you could,
on.
Like you said, the next 30 years from now, they'd be tracking down that character.
Just briefly, one other thing that Julie did point out too is the movie was not very progressive with the way it presented gender.
I mean, the original wasn't either.
It kind of followed in that vein of women where there was scantily clad or naked women, and there was used for sexual purposes and or plot purposes. but there weren't many women acting on their own. Aside from the rebellion leader,
And
most
Robin
people,
Wright was just there.
she
you
did.
know? Yeah.
So a lot of women were there for it was definitely a movie for men.
or it was intentionally a commentary on kind of
I guess
what's
it'd be
going
more
on.
Because those noir fiction and books and movies were all very kind of male detective, female like sexual interest, things like that.
Except
not very
for
progressive.
the chosen one was I don't know the female name in it, but she was like the one
But
that
there wasn't a lot that she did.
Also, too, real quick, when
yeah.
Deckard says her eyes were green, talking about Rachel's, like I was looking back too, her eyes don't appear to be green. Maybe they were supposed to be, but they don't appear to be green. So either his memories are fading, replaced, are different than reality, or he was testing them. You know what I mean? Or he was basically,
or he was
fibbing to them to just throw them off to say like you don't like they were trying to replicate her to get the key to finding out replicants that could reproduce.
Yeah.
Maybe he was doing that to try to fool them to saying like, hey, this isn't the same.
Well,
and I don't know.
And two, whatever technological mojo or juju or whatever they used to create Sean Young's character again as Rachel, whatever they did worked.
It was good, but I was still like, it always throws you off because it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
But it does look real.
But I think that was the point of that scene. Too.
It
was.
Yeah.
It just
It
unsettled
looked
me.
far more convincing than the Princess Leia stuff from Rogue
Oh
One.
God,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that wraps up our spoiler discussion of Blade Runner
Yeah, we can
2049.
stop there because
There's more to
so
discuss.
much. Yeah.
it's phenomenal
we'll have to
film.
dig back into
I
it
can't
later.
wait. Like I want to see it 5 more times in theaters.
Yeah, so
And go watch Sicario. Him, Denny,
Arrival.
Denny and Deacon's other film. I think they also did Prisoners together, which is very good. But go watch Sicario, and Arrival is also awesome. But Deacons didn't do that, but that was still a beautiful looking film as well. And Arrival is awesome.
Be very careful driving after seeing Denis Villeneuve movie.
Every time one of those films comes out, William gets in a wreck. So
Yeah. Yep. So that'll bring this episode of the House by VSR podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.